Camembert's corps has been marching since first light to a central place on the battlefield between Pigafetta in the south and Gamolost in the north. At about 10 o'clock his units are spotted by Rostopki, who decides this is the royalist attack and orders the Gardes Corps to move to the Linktor and flank. But Camembert does not attack. His corps moves into line with its left on Bruges Knob and its right on the Dreckveld. At 11 a.m. scouts are sent forward to ascertain the enemy's strength. They report that the enemy corps is deployed 8 brigades wide, with a second line of units behind, about 32,000 mice. But Camembert is not disheartened by this information. He believes that at least half of that formation is militia and can be easily broken. He issues orders for an advance, and the messengers are on their way when Baron Gamolost arrives to inspect the situation. Camembert reports and says he is attacking. Gamolost sniffs and asks if Camembert requires reinforcements, as the northern wing is not yet engaged. Camembert says, "Not at the moment. I am advancing to attack the enemy's centre, which appears weaker than my own forces." Camembert has 22,000 mice, and he decides to leave 2 brigades of militia behind to guard the guns, so 18,000. And then 2 brigades of cavalry are detached and sent south and west to get behind the enemy line, so 14,000 mice march forward against an enemy force reported to be around 30,000. And there is no second line of royalist reserves. Gamolast's corps is quite distant to the north, and Pigafetta is engaged to the south. Camembert's infantry crosses the stream and halts, waiting to see what the enemy will do, and trading artillery fire. Neither side is willing to take that last fateful plunge across the line and begin a general engagement. And then, at about 2 o'clock, Rostopki returns from his journey to Muskrat and the Guards Corps. He was nearly captured by the royalist cavalry near the village. Now he orders his regulars to pass through the lines of militia and advance, to attack Camembert's right, refusing the left. It is both a strange decision and the right decision. Strange because Rostopki knows that the Guards Corps is being overwhelmed and the enemy are in strength on his right. But a right decision because he knows he outnumbers the enemy to his front and that Penella's cavalry is out there somewhere, potentially in the enemy rear. The sacrifice of the guards may yet be avenged by cracking the royalist centre. But the situation is very strange indeed. Rostopki has scout reports that the corps facing him is that of Camembert, the corps that was believed to be far to the east, dealing with Zurin, that the enemy army is now at least 20,000 mice stronger than expected, and even outnumbers his own force. Yet Rostopki sends no couriers to report this fact to his northern wing. The die has been cast, and the old count will see how it lands. No retreat. "Gentle mice," he says, "the situation is dire. The enemy has attacked our guards with overwhelming force. Therefore we must shift our angle of attack to here, where the enemy line appears thin. No more time must be lost." Rostopki's corps begins to advance, except for his right, which redeploys to repel the cavalry. Camembert considers withdrawal but decides against it. He will stand and fight here on the banks of this shallow creek, and his decision seems wise. The royalist line is well prepared and opens a devastating fire that severely disrupts the attack. And a guards brigade from Camembert's left division countercharges, routing a brigade of regulars and one of militia. Then the guards do something reckless. Instead of retiring to their lines, or even advancing up the hill, they wheel to their right and charge into the flank of the advancing divisions, but expose their own flank to the artillery, who pour on the fire most furiously. The guards panic and shatter, fleeing to the rear, carrying some militia brigades with them. The battle by the creek becomes a bloody stalemate, as unit after unit of loyalist infantry are fed in, become pinned, rally, and are fed in again. But the royalists have no reserves to feed in, and their lines begin to crack. After 2 hours of vicious fighting, the last reserves are sent in, led by a suicidal division commander, and it is enough. Camembert's right is broken, the units shatter and fall back and fade away. Camembert's left realigns to the rear, defending a farmyard. And Rostopki sets about the difficult task of rallying his troops, reforming his line, and looking to his right, the south, because Pigafetta's corps is now advancing in strength with Camembert's cavalry in support. Camembert himself is nowhere to be found. With his lines breaking, he was carried away, and will eventually make his way to Gamolost's headquarters to report the loss of the centre. But Pigafetta assumes command of his remaining forces and pushes the advantage. His troops crack through Rostopki's 1st Division, and cavalry swings in from the rear to surround and destroy. As the sun sets, Pigafetta is atop their BN view, looking down on Rostopki's lines pushed against the Dreckveld. Rostopki has bet long, placing his hope on Penella and 2nd Corps. But where is Decimaus? And where is Penella and the Cavalry Corps? Decimal Second Corps and Penella's cavalry are marching to the north of Gamelost's royalist army, defending the approaches to Milberkäse. Gudarian's initial plan was for Decimaus to deploy with the cavalry on his left to break the flank of the royalist line. Rostopki has altered this plan somewhat, giving Penella instructions to make for the enemy rear to block their path of retreat to Milberkäse. And Penella, a very independent cavalry commander, has taken to these instructions with gusto. The lead elements of Decimaus's corps arrive on the field at about midday, and the vanguard of Penella will appear on their flank just after that, but will keep on riding and not appear again until just before 2 o'clock, and not actually engage the enemy until 4 o'clock, 5 hours after the first cannon fired. The main action in the north concerns Decimaus's corps, some 30,000 mice, with 1 brigade of cavalry and an artillery battery. Over half of the infantry are militia brigades. Cavalry scouts report that the corps is opposed by Gamelost, stretching in a long line between 2 hills, behind a stream. Gamelost has 36,000 mice, and every intention to hold this ground. He has more guns, more cavalry, and better quality infantry than Decimaus. He also has internal lines of communication to the other 2 corps, while the couriers between Decimaus and Rostopki take almost an hour to ride around the field to communicate. Decimaus's whole corps is marching down a single road, and it will take hours for the long columns to arrive and form up for battle. The artillery begin exchanging fire after 1 o'clock, and by the time all of Decimaus's corps has arrived in the north at 2, the battle is essentially over and decided in the far south. Gamelost has spent a good portion of the morning riding to the other corps commands to see what is happening across the field, but is now firmly back in the north. He has reports that a large body of enemy troops have been seen moving around his right to the south, and decides that the best response is to attack and destroy the forces opposing him before this mystery force returns. At 2 o'clock his leftmost division come down from their hill and splash across the creek. This will begin a vicious series of engagements, of charge and countercharge amongst the wheat fields, with severe casualties on both sides. Then Gamelost's centre will advance just before 3 o'clock, followed in turn by his right. These attacks meet stiff resistance, and the 2 sides fall into the exchange of volleys, orders to rally and reform, and calling for reinforcements. Fresh reports reach Gamelost of the presence of unknown troops in his rear, near the village of Hollywhisk. The Baron orders the attack to continue, and rides with his staff to investigate the situation, but his suspicions are confirmed. There are brigades of loyalist cavalry in his rear, total strength unknown. Gamelost and his staff ride for their own lines, pursued by enemy cavalry.